It's Tuesday, August 6th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Welcome to Gardening Day, folks. It's Tuesday in the summertime. Dan Rubin is here. We're ready to talk tips and techniques, and if you've got questions, get at us. Also, we want your garden updates. Tuesdays in the grow season. It's so great as we march our way first through the is spring going to happen, then spring comes, and then eventually we get into August. And if you want to, like I said, if you got questions, if you want some tips, techniques, talk, if you want to just talk about how, update us on how things are growing, your grow season is going. I know I was driving home just yesterday, a couple houses on Forest Road. Good gosh, stuff out in full bloom, looking fantastic. Give us a call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. Speaking of fantastic, Dan Rubin, how you doing?
Hi, Adam. Happy to be here.
How's your summer going?
It's going pretty well, you know. There was that long lull when things were cold and wet and cold and wet and on and on. But I've got some very happy garlic. I've got beans coming on and peas growing and all kinds of stuff in bloom. It's wonderful. I stand out on my deck and look out and go, yeah.
That's cool. I love it. The book you wrote, right? Sun, Seed, and Soil, Tips and Techniques for a Northern Garden. Once one of those things gets released into the world and time goes by, what's it like? How often do folks talk to you about it? Is it something that ever comes up?
I'm getting a steady stream of feedback, and it feels so good because what people are letting me know basically is that they like the book, and they like it because it's friendly. People have actually said that they stopped gardening, and the book kind of lured them back into gardening. And when I hear that, I'm really happy because, I don't care about the royalties. What I care about is that the book is useful to people, and the feedback is that it is. So that's what's going on. Copies are selling. Last royalty check indicated about 1,000 copies sold. And
that's great.
It's great, yeah.
Well, they have an impact with 1,000 different people who are looking through this thing. And, like you said, some folks who distance themselves from it and to get back into it. What do you find what are the bits for folks getting reconnected with gardening that you've heard?
Well, a lot of what I hear, and I don't mean this as a criticism of anyone, because I have some other books like Nikki Jabor's book that I love. The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener is another great gardening book for our zone. Yeah, is that they're finding things very technical and kind of snooty. Yeah. And my book is the opposite. It's here I am, and I'm learning as I go, and you can too. And that's how it goes in the workshops that I do. Yeah. I judge the effectiveness of the workshop by the smiles and the enthusiasm when people are leaving. I'm actually doing a seed saving workshop this evening at 6:30 at the A.C. Hunter Library. If anybody wants to come to that, call the library, 737-3950. That's the number to sign up. But I really like the give and take. I'm always learning new things. Oh, yeah. And I learn those a lot from the people that I'm helping learn things.
I love the range of gardening guests we have on the show. I love each week when one of you is in because it's your own experience, then the experience of the people in your networks, and so like the whole collective of it together for learning as a province for discussion. It's really a community.
I'm directly connected with Steve and Lisa McBride and with my good friend David Goodyear in Flat Rock, and we're all collaborating in a sense. And what I mostly wanted to say on the radio today, I was thinking about it, and I'm talking to you gardeners out there, is that what you are doing is really vital. It's really important. I listen to the dismal news on the radio, as we all do, about the loss of the Antarctic West ice shelf and the floods in China and things like that. We are losing, on a global level, the capacity to grow our food. That's in process. We went into the grocery store, my wife did the other day, and bought 3 liters of olive oil Cost $55.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you take out a mortgage on that? Because 3 liters of olive oil.
I mean, we
good
cook with
gosh.
olive oil all the time, so it's an essential to us, but oh
I
my
know.
God. And it's not going to get any better, folks. And what we learned from the survey that Food Producers Forum did in 2022 was that the 745 people who completed the survey produced 6.2 million pounds of food here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And about 100 of those grow commercially. 30 big growers, 70 people who sell something. But, 441,000 pounds of food was produced by the other 650. So if you're a gardener and you grow, as I do, too much lettuce, what do? I put it in a plastic bag. I take it across the street to my friends Dennis and Mary Pat, and I share it around. And everybody's doing that sharing. And that's really what we want. And the roots of that are home gardeners.
Yeah.
So keep it up, folks.
I just, for my wife and I mean, I've talked about this through the season so far. My wife from seed for perilla leaves, right? So get nip and Korean, which is part for Korean barbecue, also for salads, and there's a few other dishes. So grew those very successfully this year. We popped up and got some herbs, just a starter, little herb garden. And so this is just for us. It's just kind of like the start, right? But it feels great. And then, to have the other night salad, or I was doing a salad, and it's like, hey, let's get some of these perilla leaves, so chop it over, and it gives such a nice.
Here I go
flavor.
demonstrating the fact that there's something that I don't know. I hate being called a garden expert or a guru. I'm not. I'm just another bloody gardener learning as he goes. We all are, and that's the message that my book sends out. That I'm so pleased about is, hey, do it.
Yeah.
Just
go
don't
out,
worry.
get dirty and do it.
You can do this.
Yeah.
Figure it out. You're going to kill some plants. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I do that too. But perilla, I was looking at perilla seeds in my greens, thinking whether I had planted it. And frankly, I don't know what they are. Tell me about it. What's perilla?
I talked to Ross about this too. So, and I think I've talked to everyone this summer about it. Perilla leaves, similar, same family as mint, same as Japanese shiso. So there's I guess a bittery type taste. It's a really nice kind of a sharper taste to it. Taste. And let's say if you're having Korean barbecue, right? So you're grilling some pork belly, it's fatty. But then this, for Korean barbecue, you'll have cut up your pork belly, right? Grilled, and so you have a little piece of meat. Then you have some kind of piece, like a piece of lettuce. And then on top of that, you might put your perilla leaf. Right?
Yeah.
And then you put your meat. And then if you've got some grilled garlic there with it, sometimes some grilled onion. And then you can also have some gochujang, the red pepper paste, or kimchi as well. And you wrap all that up in a little ball of deliciousness and you eat it. But also then, like I said, I'll just snip it over a salad. And it's just the same as what you do with any other, the fresh herbs that you can grow with these leaves. It just really augments your salad for this summer freshness. It's so good.
What I did yesterday evening was I went out into my garden with a pair of scissors and I walked around. And first I went into the greenhouse and I pulled up some flowering tops from the basil plants because I want leaf, not flower mostly. And then I walked through the garden and I harvested some kale leaf and I harvested some chives. And I went in and I chopped it all up into a frying pan, added some of that expensive olive oil, and I simmered it up and added a little bit of water to soften it, and it went over pasta, linguine.
Oh, perfect.
And it was, a little bit of salt, a little bit of balsamic, and it's perfect. And it cost me nothing except the fact that I have a garden and a greenhouse. Well, we can grow what we need here.
And looking at, and again, I feel my little entry point this year for the little herb garden, and then for work my wife is doing around the perilla leaves and little things, planters we have on our patio, it is such an amazing entry point into this world of understanding just what more we can try now next year, and because it's I find fresh herbs taste of summer.
Oh, the flavors. And so I'm going to check with perilla. I'm going to see if I can plant a bit of it in my own garden and check it out, because that's true. Gardening is a journey, and it takes you into worlds that you never even knew were there. I didn't know, for example, at the time the book was done, that if you plant onions and carrots together, they protect each other from pests.
That's wild, right?
And learning all the time. So it's quite the adventure. And if you're not a gardener already, do what Adam is talking about. Get a little box or a bin or a flower pot. Put some good soil in it. It has to be good soil, rich and organic. And buy a packet of seeds and try growing lettuce or herbs or mint or whatever. And it'll be so great, and you'll be in a new world.
And it's my colleague Carolyn Stokes, right with the Here and Now, did a piece with Ross Travers recently, and say with like it all. I love when the advice lines up like this too. Ross's advice, same thing. Start small,
yes,
and go with it. But then yours as well is like, don't be scared to make mistakes. You're going to kill plants. When you package all of this into like an advice packet, it leads to good things, great things.
Yeah.
Speaking of packets, you got something in front of you. What is it?
Oh, yeah. I've got a little packet that I just made up on my way to the seed saving workshop at the library this evening. And in it, I've got freshly harvested walking onion bulbils. These are ready to plant. They are perennial. You will have onions forever. And I'm going to give them away to the first caller or texter who can tell me the difference between a poem and a droop.
So what's the difference between a poem and a droop? The text line, 709-327-8206.
First correct answer.
8206. The signal at cbc.ca. And folks, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Onions for life. And what's the, say the question again there, Dan?
What's the difference between a poem and a droop?
Excellent. Now, speaking of emails, we had a couple come in beforehand. So this one from Bill. I'm a longtime Crosstalk / The Signal listener. Love that. Love the show, he says. Thank you, Bill. I have gained so much from the gardening show over the years. My question for your guest is relating to vegetables bolting this year.
Yes.
So far, my bok choy bolted early, never really got going at all. And a few I had separate are now starting to bolt. Some onions, particularly red and white ones, yellow seem okay, bolted several weeks ago. And finally, my broccoli is now starting to bolt. I'm wondering what your guest's thoughts are. And Bill, I'm sorry about all the bolting there, buddy. That's really disappointing.
This guy is nuts about bolts.
Yeah, right. Hey.
No, to answer the question, and for those who don't know, the word bolt in gardening means going to seed. It means that a plant that you're harvesting for its leaf or its stem, like lettuce or broccoli or kale, suddenly decides it's time to reproduce, and it begins producing flowers and going to seed. And that happens when plants are stressed. And it's very typical, for example, for lettuce to go to seed too early, and it does that when it gets hot and dry. So my lettuce, for example, is planted right now in a raised bed in the shadow of the afternoon sun cast by a large spruce tree, and it hasn't bolted. And I guarantee if it were in the full sun in the afternoon, it would.
Right.
Because that message to the plant is your days are numbered. You better reproduce. Oh. And so to the extent that you can provide shade, like a shade cloth or a screen, the extent to which you can keep things well watered, moist, and cool, that will resist bolting. But for some things, like broccoli, what you eat is the flower stalk just before the flowers open and the broccoli turns yellow. But for many other plants that we like to eat the leaves, bolting is something you want to fend off. And you do that by keeping things shaded and cool. And it's been very hot.
Yeah.
So that's why it's happening.
Yeah, unlike other seasons, right? Because we've had, like you said at the beginning of the show, we had that through, at least in the St. John's metro area or a lot of the island, you had the wet June that all of a sudden stopped. And then, gosh, like there's been a whole lot of sun through July and heat and stuff up till now, right?
I've been watering my garden sometimes twice a day, and I have municipal water, but I also have rainwater in a 1,000-liter tote that I can use. And watering, by the way, is a really great time to feed. Yeah. If you can get composted seaweed concentrate or any of the plant or fish emulsions that are available from local producers, mix them in with water 1 to 10, and you'll see the results very quickly. You'll get much better production if you feed as you water.
So what should people keep in mind then if you're it can be a hotter summer. There can be more sun than normal. What to set, like you talked about shade for a spruce tree, what types of things should people then look for planning wise to try to say, hey, next year I don't want this to happen, like for shade and just, like what types of things should people be doing?
Well, generally speaking, we live in the north and things are cold here, and the winter lasts a long time, and we get really tired of it by April and May and June. And so the big piece is protecting plants from cold and wind. And I do that with raised beds, but there's various ways to do that. Gardening in greenhouses or shelters or cloches or containers on a deck. But by the time it gets hot like this, what you're looking for is shade, and you want to continually water through the morning and then in the evening. The problem with evening watering, of course, is it encourages mold because the water sits on the plants. And tomatoes particularly don't like their leaves watered in the evening. But if you make a routine out of watering, it's a great chance to observe your garden and learn and catch pests before they start to really do their work. But it's also a chance to think about things like automatic watering systems and drip irrigation and that. So what I've really been learning about is how to build designed structures that make plants healthy.
Yeah, right on.
That's the real adventure for me.
We've got Jackie on the line, calling from St. John's. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
Hello?
Hi, we're here.
Hi, it's Jackie Feltham calling. I know the difference between a poem and a droop.
Oh, you're lucky.
Poem has, or not technically, but
Sure.
in non-botanical language, the poems have seeds like apples, and droops have the hard stone in the middle like peaches and plums.
You got it. That's exactly right. And I love, wonderful words like poem and droop. Aren't they wonderful? Poem, droop.
Actually, how I remember it is only droops get black knot.
That's right, they do.
I think back to, right, it's got to be a droop because it's got a stone in it like a cherry. That's sort of my line of thought for remembering it, but that is the difference. And I've been looking for those onion bulblets for a couple of years now.
I've been selling them through Holland Nursery on Torbay Road. That's one place you can find them. But you could also go online and order them from me at Perfectly Perennial. But I'm really happy to send these out to you. I'm going to pass this along to CBC, and they'll figure out how to get them to you, Jackie. Did you have a garden question or a story to share?
Well, other than the fact that I've been tending the garden that my father started in 1963. So I'm working with 60 years of seaweed and manure and compost.
I envy that.
And
That's
maybe
wonderful.
Caitlin if he managed to get it there before Mom found out.
I love it. I buried some really deep and planted my garlic over it in a raised bed in my garden last year, and oh my God, the garlic was as big as my fist. I swear.
He would use it at the cottage, but not on a residential city lot.
No, it can get
smelly.
smelly.
But I think my dog dug it up once at the cottage and rolled in it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about gardening here in Newfoundland that people need to be aware of is that we have wonderful free resources for soil health all around us.
Yes.
And I would list compost, of course, as first and last, but also grass clippings as mulch. Mulching is a great technique for avoiding weeds.
I just leave them on the ground, just make sure they don't bundle up in a great big pile.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
feed
if
the
I
grass.
rake, it's only to thin out the pile, a pile somewhere.
I would add to the list maple leaves, seaweed, fish wastes, and there are other things as well around us that are really useful for building soil health.
Yeah, well, I try to go, if not 100% organic, very close.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do use that fish emulsion fertilizer.
That's the stuff I believe that the fish that Diane Hollett makes, or it may be an imported one. Whatever it is, it's good
I
stuff.
I got it at Murray's Garden Centre. It would have been local.
That would be the local stuff that Diane Hollett produces,
Okay, I didn't notice who produces it, but I'm damned I'm going to give Scott's me for Miracle Grow when we can when we can buy something that someone in this end of the world is trying to make a living off of.
No,
Yeah,
that's a
I'm
great
right
point.
with you on that.
Very good. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, Jackie, and we'll give you a shout after the show now to make sure we'll figure out either just the best way to get those to you.
No problem.
All right, thanks.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for the call.
Jackie Feltham there. And Kim sent an email and you just missed it. A drupe has one seed. I'm going to guess that a poem has multiple seeds in a central structure. Just missed out on that one. Thank you for the email, though. Much appreciated, as always. And you said you can order these too, right, Dan?
Yeah, you can order them from me online, perfectly perennial. I can put them in the mail. And you should be able to find some. I'm going to restock as well with this year's production in a few days at Holland Nursery on Torbay Road.
Now, like, let's say if I were just to plant these now in my back deck or whatever, so then what happens?
So you're talking about a container?
Yeah.
Well, they're very hardy, so they can go right through the winter. But there is a difference between the ground and a container.
Yeah, exactly.
A container can freeze solid.
Yeah.
So you'd be well advised to plant them, and I say plant them 2 or 3 inches down to protect them from frost in the ground. But if you're putting them in a container, bring that container indoors into a shed or a garage where it's a bit protected, and overwinter them, and then put them out again in the spring, and they'll pop up.
Cool. So then here's a question. If you have a little herb garden in a container, what should you do winter-wise for that? Like, do you keep that outside on your deck, or should you bring it in somewhere?
You'd be well advised, because we've had some very hard winters in the last couple of years, to protect them by bringing them inside. I bring most of my perennials into the greenhouse, which is unheated. Does freeze, but it doesn't freeze as hard as outdoors. And the crazy thing is that if plants get snow over them, the snow insulates them. It's those days when there's no snow protection and it drops to minus 22 that you can lose plants to the frost.
Let's go back to the phones. And folks, so Dan Rubin's here for the full show, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. It is gardening day in August here on The Signal, 709-327-8206 for your texts, and the signal at cbc.ca for emails. Bob Fitzpatrick is on the line, calling from St. John's. Hi, Bob. Oh, hello. Gremlins in the system. Yeah, gremlins in the system. We'll get back to Bob shortly while we try to get back in touch with him. We've got a text here, a two-part question, Dan.
Oh, two-part.
I planted a Toka European plum tree 6 or 7 years ago. It was relatively healthy, but its leaves are growing on just the top. It has never produced fruit so far. For context, an apple tree and an ivory silk lilac tree are planted right next to it, and hydrangeas are under it. The apple tree produces fruit, but this year it looks like it's not as much as previous years. Also, the lilac doesn't bloom as much as I thought it would. What can I do to make whatever needs to bloom?
Okay. Well,
and here's I think this is a picture that was attached.
Yeah, let's see a picture. Although that may not tell the whole story. I'll have to take a look at it.
Does that?
That picture of the plum with the leaves right at the very top and the bare stems suggests that it may need some help in terms of plant nutrition. But it's really hard with those questions to answer them unless you're there and know a little bit more about the ground and the history. Some fruit trees bloom in a few years. Usually when you buy a tree, a grafted tree, it's about 3 or 4 years old. You put them in the ground, a couple of years go by. Now you got a 6-year-old, 7-year-old tree, and you do get fruit off of it. A little bit at first and more as the tree matures. But the issue may be that, same as your lilac, that you need to feed it. And where you need to feed a fruit tree or a tree of any kind is at the drip line. That's the very furthest out branches straight below them. And any kind of organic matter that you can dig in, fish fertilizer, marine compost, things that have more than just nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, they have the micronutrients, can be essential to growth. I would say it's a young tree, but it does need some help. So I would recommend feeding well that whole area.
And we just got an email from someone just, again, asking for your name in general. Like Dan Rubin is here all day for the show. And
until 1 o'clock.
Until all day. Yeah. I've got your retainer
I have other
through
things
the day.
To do today. I'm sorry.
What are you talking about? We'll hang out here at CBC. And also for Dan's book, right? He's the author of Sun, Seed, and Soil, Tips and Techniques for a northern garden. You are listening to The Signal. And if you want to give us a call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. And just checking.
Was there a second part to that question?
Sorry. The second part for the question was just about the plum tree itself and what to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Toka plum, that's a European plum. I think Toka is a Japanese plum, actually, and bears those yellow plums, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody will correct me on that, if I am. But the thing about the plum trees is that they're a little bit slower bearing than like your apples. And sometimes what you need, if it does get flowers, blossoms, is a pollinator of a different variety. So you might think of looking toward the future adding a second related plum. And you can find out which varieties are good pollinators when you go online.
I think we got Bob now back. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Adam and Dan, and thank you for taking my call. I think we had a ghost in the machine there.
Oh, gremlins in the system, you know.
Hi, Bob.
I have a question. My wife and I were planning to build a greenhouse in the fall to have it ready for the spring. And my question is, there's a nice style greenhouse that I've seen around, and it looks nice. My question: how much soil do we need in the base of the greenhouse to plant whatever we want to plant?
That's a great question. Let me try and wrap my head around it. First of all, I think you're talking about Sun Valley, the ones with the corrugated polycarbonate roofs and sides.
Yeah,
and they're framed in wood, and they're gorgeous. And I've met the man who builds them one day at Kent, and I have to say that he's doing beautiful, gorgeous, effective work. So I'm a big fan.
And the name that you gave them was what?
Sun Valley is the name of his company.
Sun Valley,
and they're
okay,
local.
Thank you.
They're a local company.
Yeah.
So they've got a good design. The one thing is that I'm a big fan of not having transparent walls on all sides. Depending on where you're putting your greenhouse and how big it will be, think of the long side facing south. And that side, the wall and the roof being transparent. But the north side, at least the wall, but even the roof, not being transparent, but being insulated. Because the sun never shines from the north. I know there's diffuse light that can come in, and the sun does kind of wrap around as it makes its journey across the sky. But to the degree you can insulate the north wall, you're going to have a better winter greenhouse. Now, your question is about...
the sun would cross right across one wall in our case.
Yeah, and that wall can be reflective, or it can be made up of something that will absorb the heat and hold it, which could be a water tank or column or brick or concrete. We're building passive solar greenhouses right across the province now in 3 places as part of the project that I lead.
Yeah.
And we have one under construction in Mary's Harbor, Labrador, one in Kings Point, and one that we just started building in Port Blandford. And these are structures, we call them earth-sheltered greenhouses that have, I call it a greenhouse with its arse in the earth, that are built into a hillside so that only the south side is transparent. Now, that's a different design from Sun Valley, and those Sun Valley ones are beautiful, and they're great, and they work too. But you do have to think about the wintertime and ways of storing the sunlight as thermal mass.
Sure.
Okay, so let me go to your question, which is what about the soil underneath? There's different ways to use a greenhouse. You can use a greenhouse for container gardening. You can build raised beds inside the greenhouse. So what I would kind of recommend for your greenhouse, depending on how big is it going to be? Let me find that out.
We're looking at 8 by 10.
8 by 10. So that's a nice small greenhouse. My word of warning is even 2 feet in either direction makes a huge difference in usable space. But the question you asked is, what do we do about the soil? So my recommendations is, if you can dig the greenhouse down into the ground, even a few feet, and then lay a gravel bed, and then put raised beds into the greenhouse that will raise the soil up above the gravel at least 10 inches, even better, a foot or a foot and a half. And then build those walls out of concrete or wood to enclose the raised beds.
Okay.
So you can walk down the middle of the greenhouse between two raised beds and then fill those with the most gorgeous soil mix you can find.
Sure.
Starting with the Pisces seafood mix delivered by truck by Carew Services.
Yeah.
And then mix in your manure and your garden lime and your maple leaves and your seaweed. You're going to end up with the best kind of soil, and the gravel below will give you drainage.
Wonderful.
That would be my recommendation for the soil.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
I hope that's useful, Bob. Great to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
See you, Bob. Thanks. All right, Bob Fitzpatrick giving us a call there. Let me see. I will go to an email, then back to the phone lines. I have 2 greenhouses I built last year, and I tried corn and hot peppers and tomatoes along with some flowers. This year I focused on strawberries and getting some flowers started. However, overall, I find the greenhouses are not that productive in terms of volume. What is the best way to maximize the benefit of a greenhouse?
Again, a great greenhouse question. So first of all, for corn, or for a lot of other things that you start from seed, because you can start corn from seed, one of the best ways to do it is to use toilet paper rolls, fill them with soil, put a single seed, and you can make those the equivalent out of newspaper as well, and start them in these tubes, and then put the whole tube into the ground, and the paper rots away. But you can start corn inside, but you do not need a greenhouse to grow the corn. It's an outdoor crop. And the thing that I love about greenhouses is that they're good in all seasons of the year. What I mean is that in the wintertime, you overwinter your perennials. In the springtime, you start your seeds. In the summer, you grow the crops that need the warmth, like basil, peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes in full sun and full heat. And then in the fall, what you're doing is you're starting things that are part of your fall planting, because you can grow things right through the winter here if you protect them, if you enclose them. And so the way you maximize the use of your greenhouse is to grow vertically. That is to say, you have some things growing in the ground or in raised beds. You have some things growing in pots on a shelf. That's where I put my peppers. You have some things in hanging pots dangling overhead. That's where I put my basil, because it's the most heat-loving. And you basically fill the space vertically with food, herbs, and flowers.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Let's go back to the phone lines. Yuvadi's on the line from Glovertown. Hi.
Hey, Yuvadi.
Hello, raining here.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, heavy rain.
Oh, wow.
So I have a family reunion for almost 10 days. I'm so busy, but now I'm free now to listen radio. So my question is, my onion doesn't do well at all. I put in the box, Maybe I put too many. And they're just small and they turn yellow leaf. That's the first question. And the second one is, I grow strawberry in the pot, like a flower pot people gave me, I think it's a good idea because they don't touch the ground. But it doesn't get many fruit like I used to put on the bed. And the third one, I like the idea you said, raised bed in a greenhouse, because I used to do that. This year I just changed to put in the bucket. And the tomato, like, they're a little bit dry. I had to put lots of water. And sometimes I come there, they're all like sad, But I like the idea, put the pepper. Usually I feel when I put the pepper, like green or red pepper in the greenhouse. But this year I put in a bucket. They're doing well. Okay, so my question is, I want to know about onion and strawberries. About next year I already prepared 2 beds, and I will transfer from the pot, because in the pot it doesn't produce much many fruit like I like to have.
Yeah. So I would say about the onions that there's two basic ways to plant onions. You can plant onion sets, the babies that you buy in the little mesh bags at a lot of stores, and that's what I plant. Or you can start onion seed indoors, and it's a really easy way to do it because you can plant them into a tray or a container from seed very densely, and then when they sprout up and they're thick, 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 you can tease them apart, tease the roots apart and plant them out. My usual spacing for onions is about 4 to 5 inches, and I plant in a staggered pattern. Do you know what that is? What I mean when I say staggered pattern?
Not very.
Okay.
Please tell me.
So if I spread up my 4 fingers and I put them down, that's a row of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next row in the space between my fingers, moved over into new row, would have 1, 2, 3. So they're like little diamond shapes, the spacing between them.
You're zigzagging your onions.
Zigzagging. Yeah, so that maximizes the space. And onions and garlic are heavy feeders. So the yellowing that you're seeing and the lack of growth could be two things, because I'm seeing poor results with my onions as well. And I had great results last year. And I think it's because it's been so hot that they need constant watering. And also it's the question of soil quality, right, of feeding the garden. So, and this is the answer to the question about the growing of the tomatoes versus the peppers in a container. A lot of people plant in buckets these days, and it's a very kind of fun thing to do. But you take the place of Mother Nature when you don't plant into the ground. You're responsible for feeding your babies that are in the buckets. And you have to do that by providing a constant replenishment of nutrients. And as I mentioned, you can feed while you water, right? Yeah. But you have to water a lot more in these kind of weather conditions than you normally would to get good production from your onions. And you need to space them out. So it might be worthwhile, first of all, thinning them, second of all, feeding them, and thirdly, speeding up your watering to almost a daily routine while it's this hot. You're lucky you got rain coming right now.
Yeah, but in the greenhouse.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I feel moisture. Last question, if you have, I can have. I have this year I grow many cabbages, so I put in the bed and in the bucket, so it go nicely. But last week the insects started eating, so it is too late. I used cheesecloth or clover because I meant to buy, but I cannot find the sold out. So it's too late to clover up.
Okay, what you're
protecting? I have like an old curtain, it's like it's similar.
Are the leaves getting eaten? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the white. People call it the cabbage moth, but it's a butterfly. The white butterfly lays eggs. The eggs hatch, and out come the little green cabbage worms, and they can decimate your crop in just one day if there's a lot of them. So there's 3 lines of defense. First of all, right away, go out and search for them, especially under the leaves and in the fresh new leaves, and destroy them. Squish, squish. And the second line of defense is to cover them with screen or remake cloth or cheesecloth or something like that. But once the eggs are laid, it's too late. So going forward, you can protect them that way. And the third way, and I learned this from a neighbor down the road, down Sullivan's Loop in Pooch Cove, is to go down to the seawater and get a bucket of seawater and sprinkle the seawater on your cabbage plants once a week. Not a lot, but just a fine sprinkle all over them because the seawater will repel the pests. But that's
problem.
A constant issue with cabbage family plants,
Yeah, I live by the water, so no problem for that.
Yeah. Try that.
Thank you very much.
I can't prove that works, but I've seen proof of it in my own neighborhood. Beautiful big cabbages. And I said, what did you do? He said, well, I goes down to the chuck and I gets the water and I sprinkles it. So that's one thing to try.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Yuvati.
Bye-bye.
Yuvati Felden there, calling from Glovertown. You're listening to The Signal. Now, let me see, what is it? 12:44, 12:14 in most of Labrador. We are over 5 minutes early today because of an Olympic update, which we're getting every day. But we do have time if you do want to get another call in, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Texts, 709-327-8206. Speaking of texts.
Runner beans. Let's talk about runner beans.
Runner beans?
I'm just joking.
Here's one from Monica. Oh, this is an update. Just an update on my little herb garden. I've mint, 2 different varieties, green onion, cilantro, thyme, and rosemary, both of which are a bit slow to catch up with the rest. My pepper tree has flowers. I lost 3. Very sad about that. I'm delighted to use some of these in my business as well, which makes me very happy. And there's a picture of the amazing... here, I'm probably going to break the CBC computer by turning around for you all the time, Dan, but there you go.
Is that basil?
I think it's mint actually.
Oh,
from
that's
across.
mint.
Yeah, but gorgeous looking. And then quick question: I have a planter box. How should I transfer them in the winter? I did leave the mint out, and it came back in the spring, and that's the picture below. So it's a lovely mint, but just there's the question from Monica.
So the question, I believe, is what to do in the wintertime?
Yeah, I have a planter box. How should I transfer them in the winter? But she did leave the mint out, and it came back in spring.
See, the thing about container gardening, and this is why I'm not as big a fan of the bucket method as many people are, is that, as I say, you become responsible for the soil fertility, and it does get used up. The plants use up the nutrients. So a really healthy thing to do with your herbs is to leave them in their existing containers, overwinter them in a sheltered location, indoors, inside a shed, inside a greenhouse, inside your house, inside a basement. They are dormant over the winter, basically. And then they won't grow much or need much watering, but a tiny bit. And then bring them out in the spring, bare root them, by which I mean pull them out and wash the roots clean with a hose blasting, and clean the roots, and that allows you to get rid of any pests that might be clinging to the roots.
Wow.
And then replant them in freshly composed soil. That's a great mix of organic nutrients back into the same container or into a new container. And that's a perfect opportunity in the spring when things are coming back to life to separate them into clumps and get even more and share them with your neighbors and your friends, or to take cuttings as well that are ready to grow and put them in water with a little bit of rooting powder, which is aspirin, crumbled aspirin, rooting powder, same as willow bark, and then to make even more plants out of the plants you have. You don't really need anything to overwinter them other than a sheltered space. But when you're ready to bring them out, that's a great time because the forces are coming back to life to repot them and separate them.
That's great. Can I show you another picture?
Sure.
Here. So can you tell me what this is? Picture below. I discovered these eating my birch tree leaves. Also, I noticed thick spider-like webs on many of the trees. Yes, we were on the road trip last week. Everything, when we were driving up to Twillingate and in and around, everything was covered. It looked like the attack of the spider webs on all the stuff. What is that? Do you know? And
Let's see.
Here's the picture too. This is not the web picture. This is the other thing.
Right. So the question is, what is that?
Yeah, so I discovered these
eating,
and one looks like a weird caterpillar.
It's a form of it's an immature form of an insect. It's a caterpillar.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
I'm not an entomologist, so I can't give you a specific identification. But as you know, in nature, we have cycles of control. The pests that you get that you hate coming into your garden actually have predators that will take them out. But we need to develop a healthier soil so that those predators can live there. And some of them are birds, and some of them are insects, and they eat each other.
Yeah, and that's the webby things. That, not to get too technical on everyone, but
so those webby things that I see are probably some form of arachnid or insect life. And as we've experienced here in St. John's, we get cycles where there's like icky caterpillars dripping from the trees here, and then it maximizes and then it goes away. There are cycles of control that are natural, annoying as it may be to see them doing this. We can let nature can take care of them. Now, if that's in your garden and it's destroying one of your trees, you may want to look for something like BTK, which is a bacterium that attacks these insects, or you may want to use dormant oil spray in the spring to discourage them.
Yeah. Nature, eh?
Yeah, that's the big mistake that we have made as human beings in so-called Western civilization, is that we think we're separate from nature, and we're not. There's a beautiful series online now from Al Jazeera about climate change, and the final episode, and we're going to share that in our last newsletter, our latest August newsletter from Food Producers Forum, is the exploration of that fact that we think we're not part of nature, and oh my God, we could not even live without the bacteria in our in our intestines.
All right, so a couple things. Yep. We've got one call to get to. We got 4 minutes left to the show. We've got one call to get to quickly, but also, can you repeat the details, where, time, et cetera, of the event that's happening tonight? I think you mentioned at the start of the show.
It's a workshop specifically about, it's a show and tell about seed saving. It's a hands-on workshop. It will take place at the A.C. Hunter Library tonight, beginning at 6:30 p.m. It is free, but you need to register in advance to attend. It's not online. It's just an in-person event. And the number to call is 737-3950 to register.
George Williams is on the line from Gander. Hi, George. Oh, hi, George.
Hello.
Hey, you're there.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to let you know, talk about what the last caller, what it is. I think it's called tent caterpillars.
Oh, yes.
And what they do is they form like it looks like cobwebs on the tree. We first started getting them in Gander. I noticed in Gander probably about 2 years ago. But this year it's a lot worse. It's on a lot of trees. It's on fruit trees and alders, birch trees. And you need to get them early. You want to have a look and get it early. Otherwise, what they do, they start defoliating the trees, and they'll work from one branch to another. So if you get them early, now I see some people, what they do is use chemicals or blowtorch or something. What I do is and a lot of people, what they do is they cut the whole branches off. I don't think you need to do that. I think the best thing to do, what I do is I just take them and I take my hands and rub it between, you'll find them like a bunch in little clumps and I just rub them really hard between my hands, and it just kills all these little caterpillars. But you kind of want to have a look out and get them early, because otherwise they really can destroy the tree.
And these are the ones with the webs everywhere too?
Yeah, tent caterpillar.
Yes, it is. It's like a web. It's almost like, it looks like a big spider web or something like you see for Halloween people put on trees.
Yeah, look, when we were driving out last week to both for shows in Twillingate and Lewisport, I felt like we were driving into an episode of The X-Files, right? And now except that everyone was lovely when we got there, as opposed to the show. So it was
hardly any
pretty
zombies
strange
in that area anymore.
Yeah, George, thanks for the explainer on this. I appreciate it.
From my understanding, it goes in cycles, like Dan said, most things. So I think it'll usually go around for a few years, and then it kind of disappears. Thank you kindly, everyone.
Whatever likes to munch on them shows up soon after, and then they peak, and then it goes down. Mm-hmm. But I think George's advice about how to deal with them in a tree where you can reach the branches is solid advice.
Thanks, George. All right,
Thank you kindly.
Cheers, George. There, calling from Gander, and we've got you mentioned the newsletter. We only have like a minute left here in the show. Okay. If I want the newsletter, I get the newsletter, but if someone else wants it, how do they get it?
We send it out currently to about 900 people, and we pack it. It's the juiciest thing imaginable, with articles from here and articles from around the world. The current issue, the August issue, has got lots of gardening advice about growing potatoes, about growing different things, about uses for nettles and dandelion. So you go to the website, Food Producers Forum, Food Producers with an S, and then Forum, FORUM.com. And a pop-up will come and it'll say, do you want the newsletter? And you say yes. And if you get that in today or tomorrow, you'll get the August newsletter.
Gorgeous. Thanks for this. It's been fun hanging out as always.
I love it.
All right, Dan Rubin there. That is it for today's show. Today's Tuesday, August the 6th show. tomorrow, so like I said, we were on the road trip last week. We couldn't do Trivia Day on Friday, but as promised, we are bringing you a special Regatta Day Trivia Palooza. Trivia guru John Gushu will be here, and it's going to be as usual, right? We're going to have a big range of questions. It's going to be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, we're going to head to Paris 2024 for your Olympics update, and I'll catch you back again tomorrow. Thanks a lot, folks.